Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand and join us for the flag salute? Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome, everyone. It's July 29th, and we're here in a special session for our first board budget study session of the year. And I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, or you?
I'm going to start.
You're going to start. Okay,
Thanks.
I'll turn it over to Diane.
Yes. Okay, so what we'd like to start with is a context and just remind us all that we develop our budget to support our educational mission and activities and programs, services at the school sites. So we've published the mission, and I'm not going to read it to you, but I do want to highlight some phrases. Believes that all students can learn, are capable of being successful in our diverse society, providing a quality educational program in a caring, positive environment, and this will provide our students with the necessary skills to be responsible citizens, to lead happy, productive lives, and to meet the exciting challenges for the 21st century. So this is why we're here tonight, to develop a budget that supports the programs and activities that are going to support this mission. So our district core values. From our mission, we have three major core values: academic achievement, respectful community, and continuous improvement. For academic achievement, we are expecting all of our students to perform at and above grade level, and that means 100% graduation rate, and 100% of our students will be college and career ready. Respectful community, and that really focuses on the strong connections we have at schools between students and staff and teachers, and the strong relationship between home and school. It also means that we continue to foster positive school climates. We provide educational equity, and in every classroom there's love and respect for each other, and between students and staff and teachers. And so everyone who is in the community of the school has a high sense of belonging to that school and to our district. And then in terms of a value for continuous improvement, we promote that we are all lifelong learners, family members, students, staff, and teachers, and we continually to support a variety of opportunities so each and every student can learn and be successful. We take those core values and we turn them into practical, pragmatic goals. These are the district goals that were approved in September, and we have 5 goals, and all of our work is associated with these goals, and our decisions that we make, particularly our budget decisions, support these goals. Increase student learning, promote safe and respectful schools, develop budgets, and this is what we're working on tonight, to support educational programs while maintaining sustainability. Increase efficiency and effectiveness of the district operations, and build community support and engagement. So when we think about the next step, and that's building our budget, we have core budgeting principles that support the work that we do in our budget development process. So our first principle is that students and their learning are at the center of our decisions. Teaching and learning conditions matter for student success, and the requested resources for program services and activities reflect our 3 core values: academic achievement, respectful community, and continuous improvement. In addition, when we talk about sustainability, we have a goal that our reserves will be at least equal to at least 10% of the operating expenditures, and that is a goal that we've worked on in the last years. And for the last 5 years, our reserves the average is around 10 to 11%, and they have been as low as 8.44% to 14.01%. But we strive to develop a budget that has a reserve close to 10%. So the next slide is our budget development process, and I'm going to turn that over to Maureen because she facilitates the process, and I want to thank Maureen for her great work in leading us in this process.
So the budget development process it really starts the minute we close a budget cycle and adopt a budget July 1. We're already doing multi-year planning, and particularly in the fall, early winter, and right now after the governor's released his budget, we start to really put it in concrete dollars. So we have been taking monthly budget updates to the board that bring revisions as well as our actuals to date, so you can see our tracking progress. We are meeting with the leadership team at twice a month, and those budget discussions continue with the leadership team. We did share this document with the leadership team last week. The principals and at the sites, they meet with their teacher groups and their staff to also discuss the budget and their priorities. We have also surveyed employees through Google Docs to solicit feedback and input on their core values in the budget, their priorities, and when we're looking for areas of reduction, their ideas. And then here we are with our first of 4 budget study sessions. And we'll have one again every month for the next couple of months. The timeline kind of put on a calendar starts this month when the governor's budget comes out in February, and actually it'll start this week is when I start to actually build the ESCAPE 1920 actual budget database. It's a big process when you try to roll years and assignments. We also will start this month having the LCAP planning sessions where we're going to be going through with staff and our LCAP, and we start looking at our annual update of our current goals and actions that we said we would do for 18-19, and are we tracking. And then in March, a couple milestone dates. By March 15th, if there are any certificated layoffs, the board has to approve, and they have to receive notice by the 15th of March. We will be bringing at the first March meeting our second interim report, which will show any budget revisions to date and actuals through January. That's an important budget reporting cycle to bring, because actuals through January is really our biggest point in time test to say, are we tracking to our budget? And then we have another study session. We continue the LCAP conversation. In April, we continue our budget study session, our LCAP review. In May, by May 15th, the governor will deliver his May revise to his January proposal. That May revise is probably going to be more important or relevant than the January, as Governor Newsom was only in office about less than 2 weeks before the budget was put out. So if he's going to have some time to go through with the staff and make changes as he wants to propose. And then the state budget has to pass by June 15th if the state legislature wants to keep their paycheck. So it will be adopted by the 15th, and then we'll bring both a preliminary adopted and LCAP to the board, first meeting in June. We adopt it on the 25th of June. So that's our cycle. So I'm going to go ahead and start diving in to data. So the governor proposed his January budget, and in that budget, we're on slide 8, Rogelio. On slide 8, at the top, you'll see that in the governor's budget, the LCFF, or Local Control Funding Formula COLA, is projected to be 3.46, and our property tax projections are still projecting under 5%. So we're still outpacing the state COLA for new revenues. Very important thing to point out. In the governor's budget, he did add money outside of Prop 98, which is important because that almost never happens, for some pension relief for STRS increases. And so in this next table, you'll see from 17-18 through 21-22, both PERS and STRS pension rates. That's percent of salary. And for 19-20, the CalSTRS rate was 18.13, and he reduced it by 1.03%. So the governor put money into the state so that our employer rate was reduced, and we'll see the impact of that in a little bit. He also reduced in the governor's budget the 2021 by 1% and the 21-22 by 0.5%. There's no relief at this point for PERS rates because those are determined by the CalPERS board independently. The next box I think is kind of important for context. These are the total statutory percentages of health and welfare, not health and welfare, but pension and required unemployment workers' comp to salaries for classified and certificated. And for 1920, for classified, we are almost at 30%. That doesn't include health and welfare of statutory benefits on their salary. For certificated, it's just under 20%. So it's getting quite large. That's a big number.
Maureen, Jamie and I didn't know what OASTI was.
So that's Social Security. So there's OSDI and Medicare, and they both make up Social Security. It's just broken out. Teachers don't pay into OSDI; they pay into Medicare only.
Okay.
And classified employees pay into we pay into Medicare and OASDI.
Hi, Maureen. Hi. We're on slide 8.
Page 8.
And then the last box on that page shows the history of the one-time funds that have been put in the budget by the governor, Governor Brown. And you can see how it went up and then reduced and then reduced, a little bit up. In 1920, it's 0. The likelihood of, even at May revise, any money coming in on a one-time basis is very slim. I mean, I don't want to give up hope, but I doubt that anything will come. The best option we have for any additional one-time money is in the current year, in 18-19. Revenues have outpaced forecast, and there's a possibility that the state may fund additional one-time monies in the current year beyond what they projected. But none of that has been memorialized on anything. The next slide, I thought, I want to continue the conversation about statutory benefits and the cost of pensions. And I wanted to give a couple of examples of what positions cost the district just in sample. So you have a 6-hour classroom aide who works 180 days a year, a salary of $24,000. These are just averages. Their statutory benefits, along with their health and welfare, exceed their salary for a total cost of position to the district just over $46,000. So you can see that pensions have really changed the way we have to budget and the way we have to plan. A custodian, same example, an 8-hour employee, 12 months a year, the salary of $41,000 costs us $73,000, just under $74,000. And then a teacher works 183 days a year, average cost of $75,000. The cost of the district is $110,000. So, you know, when we say we hire a teacher for $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000, that's not the cost. The cost is the $110,000, $115,000, depending on where they're placed on the salary schedule.
So, I have a comment. Okay, so the example says one teacher working 183 days, salary $75,000, total costs to the district $110,000. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right. The question I have is that why put such a huge, well, not a huge salary, but a $75,000 salary, like instead of.
I just averaged. I did an average salary. That's not a person. Okay. I just averaged a salary.
So that
is our average by site. So our average salary is $75,000 a teacher. So we have teachers that are over $98,000, and we have teachers that are in 45. The 40s. Yeah. So this is an average.
However, the compensation package for a teacher is the 75 plus the 20.
Correct.
So your salary may be 75, but your total compensation is your salary and your benefits. So it's worth it to you as $95,000.
It's a value.
It's a value of compensation.
Correct. Okay.
And you have to set aside that money. For everyone,
right?
Yes.
because that's the way it works.
So the system
might
that
not
we,
get that.
yes. The system that we use is actually position and assignment based specific. So it will actually track their placement on the salary schedule, their statutories based on that placement, and the health and welfare package that they have. This and the rates for the health and welfare are set for everybody. They're the same. And so that's really an average, but you'll see variances by site and individuals, yeah.
But those are contractual fixed costs. You know, that's what the state requires, that's what the
Mm-hmm.
contract requires in the salary schedule. So we consider those fixed costs. We cannot change the increase. We can't say, no, our revenue didn't increase, so we're not going to increase your STRS and PERS and workman's comp. No, we those are what a district budget would say, that's part of the fixed costs.
So we do have unemployment through state comp. That rate does not change much. However, workers' comp is through JPA, through Santa Barbara site, and that rate is determined by your experience. It's called an XMOD, and that rate can double in a year, and it can go down half in a year. I mean, it really depends on the experience, and because we're in a pool, we get some relief. And last year through the budget process, we were able to come forward with a 50% reduction in our work comp rate, because the pool had these excess reserves that they were going to eat through. That'll take us through a couple of years, but eventually that rate may go back up. And workers' comp is a big piece. So our work comp rate alone was about 3.5% of salary. So, did you have another question, Rogelio?
That was just thinking aloud. Okay, salaries actually take, I think, for the next page or so, it's 85% of the budget, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about other school districts? I think it's normal.
No.
Why not? For example, Lompoc, Ojai.
I could look that up.
I have a booklet right here.
Okay.
That from the training that we went to last week, because most of the schools that we were with were small schools, anywhere from 200 students to, I believe, maybe 50,000 students.
I think it's,
It's all listed right here, how
Yeah.
much each of the school districts.
I think our
What
district,
there's-
I think it's comparable to, I think, Ojai.
Well, the challenge in comparing salary percent is not everybody has the same revenue base, even with LCFF. So proportionately, it will
So
vary.
actually, well,
And I will say that I think I've mentioned before that 25 years ago, if you were above 75% salary and benefits, you were not going to be fiscally solvent. But because of the recession, that bar has had to be raised. We'll talk about the impact of that percent in a bit.
okay, so the question I have is, okay, regarding the budget and other school issues, should we compare our district to other ones, or just leave them alone and focus on ours?
Compared to others.
We do compare our salary and benefits to
Oh, yeah,
districts.
this is,
We do that. We don't,
This is
the
the
percent
companion
of
to Sally's
total to
book.
budget is a different comparison because everybody has different expenses and everybody has different revenue bases. So that percentage is going to vary, but we do compare salary and benefits to all of our neighboring districts in the Tri-County area,
Yeah.
as well as statewide for basic aid our size. Yeah. So the next slide is a little bit of, oops. Let me go back. Property tax history. So the white column is our actuals, and it shows actuals through 17-18. The orange column are projected for 18-19 through 2021. It shows that in 17-18 we increased 7.39%. And I presented this at first interim, although I know that you two were not here at the time. 580,000 was a one-time impound money. So while it says 7%, that was not 7% of unsecured or ongoing taxes. So it's a little bit misleading. The projection for 18-19 at 614 is the difference because we don't have those one-time impounds. But we're still projecting a 4.92% increase in our base secured unsecured taxes. So it's down because of the one time. So when you average those two, it still is an average of about 5%.
Can you,
Okay.
sorry,
Oh.
just real quick, let me know what the projected is based on?
So when I came, I went back almost 15 years of property taxes and did some trending, and I did the projections. I did some data analysis from adopted, what we call our P1J29, where the county gives us our first projected tax amount. We get a second projected tax amount sometime late April, and then we settle up in July. And I took all of those points in time back about 15 years, and I trended. So one of the things that really hadn't been done here historically was that kind of trending for projections. So they would like low project, and it would come in, and it would low project. So this is more of an even projection, both in actual receipts of property taxes, and then I look at how it trended through the year. So we have pretty consistently received at least a 5% increase in total tax base,
In the last 15 years?
at least in the last 10. It dipped in the recession. Below 4. But that was the anomaly, and that's kind of the anomaly in Santa Barbara County. We did not have that huge recession impact like most of the state.
But we're under the presumption we're going to stay basic aid.
We are more than almost 2 million from.
Yes.
We're not going to ever go back. So I do have to do the LCFF calculation when I adopt, when I present unaudited actuals. We're very far from basic aid. Like we'd have to open
We're
a
very
whole.
far from LCFF.
I mean, from LCFF. Thank you, Andy. We would have to open like another Canalino or a 600 student school before we would get out of basic aid.
To comment on the property tax actual projections for 2019, 2020, 2021, I think I'd probably be on. I don't know if you watched Channel 3 News last night. I did. And it's public record that it made reference to the 1,200 donation that the district got from the Rotary Club with its implications. So this is what CJ Ward said, that if you live in Carpinteria and if you list your house for sale, you have to disclose that if there is because of that small marijuana odor, if you can smell it, you have to disclose it, and that will affect property. That's what I'm going at.
So you're concerned that the property taxes will go down?
The concern is that in Carpinteria, property values might go down
So the
because of this ongoing strong marijuana
the
smell.
Carpinteria home sales in Carpinteria are not. Their trajectory is not really steep. It's a very level home sale climate. And this is not just home sales. This is also corporate and commercial. Yeah. And so, a lot of the property taxes that we are receiving from the community and the county that our district is in come from a lot of sources.
Yeah, but it was like an alert from Channel 3 News.
But there's not a lot of turnover in Carpinteria either.
No.
So
we don't know yet. They were saying that's why it says that you have to disclose it.
Roger, the interesting thing is, I think the first year that we were in session, that we did this, and I remember looking at this and being assured Carpinteria property values never go down, because you can never anticipate something like the Thomas Fire or the mudslide. And now we're seeing another never can happen situation, which is property values being affected by, this highly industrialized cannabis situation where, like for me driving to work this morning or driving Maisie to Canalino this morning, and the smell by the high school overpowering.
It's like I live on Baylor,
So-
and if I put list
So
my
I
house
think-
for sale,
I
I will
think-
have to disclose it.
let's continue with Maureen's presentation.
Yeah, okay.
Right,
because
but
this-
the bottom line being, there are no assurances. There
but
are
they're
trends.
completely out of
there
our
are trends-
control.
Right, but there
Yeah.
are trends that you can look at. However, we would be foolish, I think what I'm hearing you say would be, we would be foolish not to not consider that possibility that cannabis could be impacting property
Yeah,
values,
yeah.
which would have a direct impact on our fiscal base.
Oh, correct.
But
We
that
do-
is why we try to keep that
we do
the
trend.
10% buffer.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
the whole point of the
and
reserves.
we do
Yes.
trend the real estate market in Carpinteria. Also know that the Thomas Fire impact to our district was less than $23,000. We did not see, the property tax loss countywide was not anywhere where they thought it might be. Although, you know, in Montecito, of course, it was, in Cold Springs, it was quite significant, so.
But that
Which
isn't that why the 2.8 had been so low then?
No, it's from the one-time impounds we received last year.
Yes.
Because
And you know-
because 17-18 was so much higher,
Right.
The year-over-year percent. If you took the one-time impounds out, Maureen, that increase in 18-19 would be pretty close to 5%.
Can you explain the one-time impounds?
Yes.
So, yes, thank you. So what happens at the county level is a couple of things. Some homeowners contest their property tax rates, and so it gets frozen for a while. And that can take a couple of years before it's settled, and then they have to pay what they owe. Some residential commercial buildings also contest either their rate or their square footage or the assessment, and it gets held in kind of like a litigated state until those impounds are settled, and then they're released and they have to pay. So every year we have these one-time adjustments to our property taxes. Some years it's negative a couple $100,000, and some years it's only $10,000. And last year was a huge influx of these impound releases. So talking with the county, there's no way to predict, because it is kind of like predicting litigated settlements. It doesn't. It's very,
And
you can't.
it's
And that extra impound money, we just
It's
put in the
one
budget
time.
and spin it away.
Well, it just goes into our revenue. It just goes into the bottom line.
It normally comes in May, and
Yeah.
and it'll help us reduce our cuts or budget cuts.
Yeah.
That's
Our
typically,
deficits.
It'll either help reduce the deficit, or we'll be able to reduce how many cuts we actually have to make,
Or build the reserves.
or build the reserve.
And last year, we didn't get it until the first week of July, when the year's already over. So then I close the books, and I'm like, I get the, and I wait and I wait and I wait, and I get the final, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And then I get on the phone and I try to have them explain it as best they can, and it's very technical, but a lot of times that's exactly what happens,
and also we have to take into consideration that actually the housing market has changed from a seller's market to a buyer's market. That's why we're seeing all of these huge reductions in the
And-
county.
yeah.
So we have to. That's why we have to consider everything.
We do. Yep. Okay. So the next slide is a little bit of staffing information. So this is our unrestricted general fund, and these are our FTE by basic categories of positions. And so the top part you'll see by school sites and by the type of position, and then the bottom left you'll see the district office FTE. This is just for information. So you can kind of see how we've staffed our sites. I'm not going to spend much more. Okay, so history of cost of living increases on slide 12. We've shared this before. We've added the 1819 settlement ratified agreement. The two boxes at the bottom on the right show an average COLA adjustment for certificated and classified 2.31 and 2.81. However, in 1213 there was an off schedule, so if you pull that at one time off schedule because it didn't compound, it really averages about a 2 and a 2.5% salary increase over time. So this is just historical data and some statistics.
And that's pretty typical. The districts in our county is that a 2% COLA for certificated.
On slide 13, the same type of history, but for our health and welfare increases. This is where increases get kind of all over the place. There's a couple of, in 1213 and 1516, there's a couple of caveats because we did have some rate structure changes that changed the price of our plan. In 1819, and this is for Sally and Jamie, we received a 0.5% increase in our health premiums. Unprecedented. So whether that ever happens again, we don't know. We'll be starting the benefits committee up next month, and we'll start looking at the trending with our broker.
Oh, I see it there. So it was that
On
was
the far
really
left.
low.
Right.
Okay.
So I averaged, because it's difficult to average when you have like rate plan changes and not apples and oranges. I averaged the last 3 years, and it's just under a 3.5% increase. That's the 3.5 is what I used. You'll see as I build my budget out. I did want to point out the district does pay 100% of our premium for our full-time employees, and we pay pro rata premium for those who work over 20 hours. And the current cost is just under $20,000 per person that we pay for our premium.
Do we cover spouses and family as well?
Yep, full family.
And whether somebody takes it or not, you still have to set that money aside in case somebody else comes along and they do want it.
Right. We this happened both in the September revised and first interim. Anybody, let's say you have a teacher who declined benefits, and they have a life event that happens, a qualifying life event that happens in October, they can get back on the plan full coverage. So it can fluctuate all year long. On slide 14, this is a 5-year financial history, prior year with the current year, so total of 6 years. So you can kind of see in the gray shaded areas between years our trend of revenues to expenditures. This is unrestricted. There are no grant dollars in here. No Title I, no anything. So what's interesting is, other than the 14-15 year where we had this huge influx of one-time money over $500 per student, our expenditures have outpaced any new revenue increases. So we've been kind of back at the board repeatedly having to do reductions, and that's why. So even though our revenues, and we'll talk about this a little bit, our revenues are outpacing state COLA and LCFF districts, they still don't sufficiently cover some of the required increases that we have to come up with for pension, health and welfare, and salary raises. You can see at the ending fund balance how our fund balance has been affected over time. So that too has declined, except for the 14-15 year into 15-16. And the interesting thing about the 14-15 year with the one time is some of that didn't come in until 15-16. There were these deferrals, so it's kind of a timing issue. So that's the unrestricted general fund. On page 15 is the total general fund, and this is where you'll see our history of our reserves. So the total general fund, incorporates all of our categorical programs, our local grants. This is where special ed is housed, our Title I and after-school programs. And you'll see here the revenues are very sporadic, and that has to do with a lot of times, with categoricals over the past couple of years. The funding has been kind of everywhere. But the expenditures have been consistently increasing, except for the years we've had to make reductions. Last year, coming into the 18-19 year, it only increased 0.67. We made a considerable amount of reductions coming into this year. And then at the bottom in that blue, you'll see the reserve. And as Diana mentioned, the average, it does average around 10%. In 18-19, we are looking at about a 5.87, barring any additional revenue that could come in, even one time. One-time revenue does help your reserve, because that's where it ends up, in the fund balance.
I found it interesting last week, too, that the smaller the district, the more reserve you should have.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I thought that was a great statement. I didn't realize that.
Of the basic aid districts, we have one of the lowest reserves.
Really?
Yeah, when you look at the basic aid districts, typically their reserves are much healthier.
But Montecito will obviously be affected because they lost so many houses in their.
But they have 100% reserve, so it may go down to 80.
Yes.
They have 100%. Okay.
Yeah.
Plus all the
Yeah.
donations that they got, so they're all right.
That's not donations, it's property taxes.
property.
Okay,
Tax.
it's
Yeah.
still,
So these are just a couple of pie charts that kind of show in perspective our revenue sources to the whole pie. So 83% of our revenue does come from state aid and property taxes, 8% from state revenues, 5% from local, and that's our grants, and also categorized in that local is our SELPA revenue. That's why it's 5%. And then only 4% from federal, and that federal is mostly our Title I, our Title II, and some after-school program money. On page 17, it's the same example, but for expenditures. This is the total general fund. We're at 85% for salary and benefits, 10% for services and operating expenses, and that does include our utilities, our property and liability, our obligated contracts that we have for curriculum and subscriptions for classroom. So that 10% is very much consumed by non-negotiables. And then 4% for books and supplies. And the 1% for other outgo, that is our athletics and our leases.
I was wondering about that, about the other outgo.
Yeah.
What do they mean?
So this is our this is an interesting pie chart, and I do like this one. And these are the function categories we have to report to the state on page 18. And this shows how much money we are dedicating to the different functions that support learning. So 56% of our budget is direct classroom instruction, teachers and classroom aides. 11%, which is called non-classroom support, that is our department chairs. It is also special ed director. That's kind of a category they're in. Those are all of the things that are supporting professional development, curriculum and instruction, all of the things that support the classroom directly. Pupil services at 9%. Those are our psychs, our counselors, our nurses, speech therapists. Our athletics and after-school programs are 4% of our budget. And the general admin of 8% does include the property and liability, all of our contracts, all of our legal, HR, business, transportation, everything falls into that category. And then plant services is custodial, utilities, maintenance facilities, and all of the other things that are facility and plant, the custodial related. The other outgo is these are our transfers out. We have a transfer that goes out to deferred maintenance. It is also our lease payments. And it is also payments to our SELPA. So SELPA revenue comes in as local revenue and it goes out like a tuition. So it kind of gets categorized in that bucket.
And SELP is special ed.
Special ed, I'm sorry. Yeah. Stop me if I use too many acronyms, you guys.
And speaking
I
of
just
special
write them down
education,
and later.
Yeah. And speaking of special ed, so the next slide on slide 19 is our special ed history. So again, it's 5 years with the current year, shows the revenues that have come in, the expenditures that have gone out, and in the orange bar, it's the general fund contribution that goes into special education. So special education is not fully funded. It's never meant to be fully funded. It is not a model that fully funds. It is a federal requirement to serve students with disabilities at whatever cost it takes.
and approximately 15% of our students are special ed, and it's 25% of our budget. of our expenditures.
Well, I think part of the problem is that we have, since I've been involved, we've done a really good job with special ed. And there were a lot of people that moved here because they had heard that our programs were well managed, well taught, and the kids were actually succeeding. So
Yes.
we're doing a good job, and it's costing us a whole lot of money.
Well, I mean, as I have presented to different groups, these are still our kids. They have
Absolutely.
higher, maybe more expensive needs, but nonetheless, this is what our money is supposed to serve. Okay, so now we're going to get into the 1920 budget assumptions. Again, our goal is to have a positive certification for the year we're building and 2 years out. That's actually what the Assembly Bill 1200 requires us to do. So, starting off, our 1819, we're going to go through only unrestricted because that's really the only thing that impacts our fund balance and the things that we have to focus on. The unrestricted fund balance revenue at first interim was $21,086,000. We are projecting property tax increases of $1.1 million. We have one-time money in the current year, 18-19 budget, that we will not get next year, so that's kind of a deduct. We have to take that out of the set 18-19 bucket. We also have one-time money that came in for the Thomas Fire that we will not get again. That also has to come out of that number. And then we have contributions to 2 different restricted programs out of the unrestricted general fund, special education and our restricted routine maintenance account. Those are both in Ed Code. We are proposing that we add a special education teacher, and this is something that is necessary because we are in violation of caseload limits. These are the things that we have to manage and track. And then the step and column increases for special ed also have to come out of the general fund. So the increased contribution or the deduct from revenue that we have to give to special ed is $147,000. So we're looking to have a 18-19 unrestricted revenues of $21.5 million, which is about a 2% change over prior year, net. Net. On page 21, we have required budget drivers that have to be built in every year. We have step and column increases. These are statutorily written in our collective bargaining agreements. These are, you're here 23 years, you go up 24 years, you move up the schedule and across the classified schedule. Those are $191,000. We are estimating a 3.5% increase to health and welfare based on that 3-year average I went over, $137,600. And our pension increases for CalSTRS and PERS are listed here for CalSTRS. Because the increase went down 1%, it's going to be $90,000. It was about $182,000. And our CalPERS increase is about $120,000, just under $124,000, $123,600. We estimate about a 5% increase for utilities and property and liability for a total increase to the budget of $589,000. That's an average net of about 2.7% increase just with these drivers.
So that's already more than your net increase of your revenue. You see that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's
And-
included? Let's go. Oh, go ahead.
No, I also wanted to point out that this does not include any cost of living adjustment with our unions. So we've not included that yet because we've not negotiated that yet. And 1% of a cost of living adjustment is $191,004.
Oh, the part that I was talking about, wondering about the 5% utilities increases for $36,922.
Mm-hmm.
Remember discussing this last year. Utilities, what is that? Telephones?
Power, water, garbage, sewer.
garbage.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember last year about discussing about like probably contacting other companies to probably get a better discount or get a better rate or something
For which?
for utilities. I mean, let's, for example, for power, for
You have to buy your power from Edison.
Yeah, we
Okay.
don't
Yeah, we don't
have
have a choice.
telephones.
Don't have a choice.
Pretty limited there.
We did make a switch to Verizon and saved us about $4,000 a year.
Yeah, so we did do that. That was a good
Okay.
suggestion. Yeah, for telephone. But we're pretty locked in the other utilities. Water is our biggest one. That's our water district.
With the new Gen 7 buildings and the more drought tolerant landscaping, shouldn't that offset some of that?
Eventually,
That's our expectation.
We have a lot
Yes.
of lawn. We have a lot of lawn. Like the vast majority of our landscaping is nowhere near drought tolerant. So I think that's
Kids like lawns.
that would be a really good thing to look at, which I've mentioned a number of times.
That's
Okay.
a really minor
Cost savings.
component of our budget, though.
And the
Right, but
cost to
it's-
switch it from.
It's the
Yeah.
kind of thing where it's like, if it's our, that seems to me a no-brainer in the sense that, you know, things are trending more dry, water prices are trending more expensive, and there are many programs and incentives in the city and the county to go drought tolerant or xeriscaping. So it seems to me just kind of a sustainability no-brainer, personally.
so the
Okay.
Gen 7s do have the drought tolerant, but they do take several months before they are established and mature, and then they don't need to be watered.
Right, but the landscaping around the Gen 7s relative to the lawns that we still have going, it's kind of like, it's not really, it's great that they did that, but it's not really gonna like put a dent in our water.
Well, maybe we can do a study on the cost of landscaping versus changing it to something else, and the water versus the time all of our crews have to put into maintaining that. Maybe something to look at in the future.
Yeah,
agree.
I totally agree, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go on.
At this time, on slide 22, staff is not proposing any program improvements. I did put on here for discussion a suggested improvement of board compensation. I've costed out the estimated 1920 premium with the 3.5% increase and what that cost would be. However, it's not in the right column as adding to the budget at this time.
This is based on our board bylaws of 9250. Every year when we're discussing the budget, we need to discuss the health and welfare benefits program for board members in relationship to the budget. So this is the reason why the item is right here, is because based on our budget, the board makes that determination.
But currently in our board policies, our existing board policies.
Yeah, I have them right here.
Yeah, they state that board members are entitled to that. Now, some people have read that as meaning the district should pay for that, and that's how it's been interpreted in the past. The current administration seemingly decided to change that without actually changing the policy. So for instance, when my dad was on the board for 12 years, his benefits were paid for, and the advantage of having paid benefits is that you attract a much wider and higher caliber net of people willing to do this job, rather than folks who have the time or
I take a little offense to that.
Wait,
Well,
a
I'm
higher,
one of-
a
I'm-
higher caliber?
Yes,
Yeah.
because
We're
I'm one
not
of those.
caliber.
I'm one of those people. And in this last election cycle, as you three know, nobody ran against you.
So we're less
there's-
caliber.
Well, there's it
Because
just
we were well qualified.
it just
Yeah.
it means that
I
it
think I'm
means
perfectly
that
qualified.
it means that
Incentives.
our
I
board-
understand
can
that,
can
but
I,
that-
can I finish without being interrupted?
If
Okay, the ideally, if you have an elected body of people, in my view, those elected body of people should represent the community. Okay, our community, our board, our district represents a group of students and families who are primarily working class folks who are struggling to live in a very high price area. Okay, why would they want to be, dedicate however countless hours towards a volunteer board situation? Bottom line, unless they have the ability to have very flexible or incomes that are such that they can do that, then they can. But as it stands right now, there's literally zero incentive for any low-income working family to participate in this elected body. Zero.
So I just want to correct a fact. You're misrepresenting that since 2005, there have not been benefits paid to board members. So it's not been.
When did your dad
Right,
step
but
off the board?
The
Excuse
policy
me.
didn't change, though.
No, the board voted.
The
Excuse
policy
me.
that allowed
I'm
my
not
dad
done.
to get.
What year
to
did he
get,
step off the board?
I'm not done yet.
The policy that allowed my dad to get paid benefits is
It's still.
is the same one that stands. Now that year, the board, because it was a budget crunch, or actually I don't know why.
That's why.
But the board that year said, you know what, we're gonna take a back seat and we're not gonna take benefits. On the flip side, I can guarantee you all of those people were in a financial situation that they could make. They had the privilege of making that decision.
So
And
we're
that
making
great
the decision
sacrifice.
now, and we're
So-
we're bringing that back to the board as it's required in the policy during the budget discussion. And if the board wants to add $102,365 to this budget, then we will consider it. But the board will have to vote that addition.
And actually, the board policy, as explained to me last year when I requested this information, was that the board can choose how much or how little to. The board should be deciding on how much or how little to cover. So this is showing the full coverage. However, that's not necessarily what the benefit would
Sure.
be.
Bylaws specifically state the board will pay for the entire.
It doesn't specify. It says
I read
that.
today.
Well, so
No, all it says is the board members may participate in health and
May.
welfare programs. And you may participate. I participate. I pay $20,473 a year, and I buy insurance through the district because that's allowed through CISC. And so you may do that too, Maureen, but
right,
there's
but
absolutely
there
no
was a
way
change in,
in
the
the
policy.
world we're going to...
There was a change in the policy in the sense that at one point it was covered by the paid for the district. That's, Jamie, the way you interpreted it was the way I interpreted it as well, which is that the district would pay for it.
No,
and that
may.
Right, but that
Is it-
had been, so it doesn't say shall, or it doesn't say shall, which is definitive. By saying may, it allows for some wiggle room. If we're just saying, okay, this is not a priority that we ever want to allow for districts now or in the future, then I believe the policy, and that's why I asked for it to be a policy discussion, although I guess it's here because last year I asked that it be looked at. You know what I mean? The policy should reflect what we're doing.
So let me read the policy because there's some inaccuracies. Health and welfare benefits. The board members may participate in the health and welfare benefits program provided for district employees. The district shall pay the board-determined costs of premiums for board members electing to participate in the district health and welfare benefits program. The amount of the cost of premiums to be paid by the district shall be determined annually prior to the adoption of the next annual budget. That's
It says
what we're
shall.
discussing.
It doesn't say may.
Correct.
It says shall
Shall.
pay the board appointed blah blah blah.
And it will be discussed in a budget process. So we are discussing it now.
So
Here's the option, here's what it costs, and this is what we're discussing. So we're discussing the addition of the board being covered by health and welfare benefits. That's our conversation.
So really what's happening now is not that this is being covered. What we should be looking at is a zero line item, which is what is happening.
We are looking at...
There is nothing added in the budget, I explained that.
So that's why I was saying, if we're just never going to pay for this, then we should change the board policies. I mean, why do we even have, like, it's a whole section on compensation. It shouldn't even include benefits if they're not being, you know what I mean? If no one's taking advantage of them except, you know, one board member who has the ability to pay $20,000 out of pocket for, you know what I mean? Like, that's.
So that's a policy conversation, and that will be brought to the board,
Good, 'cause that's
and a
what I was-
recommendation will be
that's
made.
what I asked for,
Yes.
is that it be brought to a
So-
policy discussion.
It will, but right now, what's in place is the 2005 board policy, and it says that we discuss it during our annual budget session. This is our budget development process, so here's the question to the board. Do you want to add board benefits for this next year budget? Because this is the policy that's in place right now. So that's why we have it here as a proposal, as a suggestion.
I think it would be worth having a conversation about what it would look like to add some concrete percentage, or, okay, this $100,000 figure. Right now, we have no benefits, like no compensation for board members. Not benefits, not a stipend, right? So, I mean, it seems to me why I wanted to have that policy discussion first was because I believe the people of Carpinteria cannot do this job effectively as parents in a reflection of our community. We would be more likely to get a representative group of people willing to do this job if we offered some kind of appreciation and recognition of the work. Even the city council, which works a lot, you know, they work a lot of hours too. There's a small stipend for them. And for a long time, like I said, when I talk to people and say, hey, have you considered running? Like, oh, well, what's the pay? I'm like, nothing. That used to have benefits. That benefits piece was a big incentive for people to take the job seriously.
A lot of people think that we get a salary.
Yeah.
A lot of people, believe me.
So it's not unreasonable, and many districts have stipends and pay benefits. And if we were a district that was not deficit spending every year, and our reserves were over 10%, that certainly you'd want to entertain. You don't want to entertain those ideas. But at the end of the day, we're sitting here with deficit spending significantly, and we're making significant cuts. So I think this conversation needs to be contextual. It's in the context of what we're discussing in terms of recommending for next year. So I don't think it's a separate item. I think it's all part of the budget discussion. And our context is that we are significantly deficit spending. And we have to go back to our guiding principles and our core budget principles about supporting what's going on in the classrooms.
Well, we've been deficit spending. There's a trend. I have voted against the budgets that have been presented to us. I have been in the minority in doing that, and we continue to deficit spend.
Maureen, that is
so
so
no,
disingenuous.
please, can you not interrupt me?
No, it's so completely.
I know. All right.
Maureen, it's so completely disingenuous for you to portray yourself as some sort of budget
Let me ask
diva.
you this: Did you
And
vote for the budget last year?
I did.
Okay, was
But
it deficit spending?
It was.
And the year before that? And the year before that?
Maureen,
And the
you
year before
voted
that?
against every cut.
And the year before
Can
that?
Andy talk? You're interrupting him.
Well, he interrupted me, and
I know,
I've been
but-
just told
but-
that I interrupt everybody, so I'm just going to go with it.
But Maureen,
No, excuse me.
This is about
Excuse me.
respect, basically.
Yes.
I mean, if I'm talking,
Yes.
then, all right, respect my right to talk. And then I'll respect my right to talk.
You refer
That's,
You need to refer to.
yeah, whoever, yeah, I mean, actually, all of us.
Well, we could use a talking stick,
I'm gonna move
as
this
some
a
people
little
do,
bit.
and, you know, I mean, you can do this like it's done with groups of children. If we're going to all respect the idea that one person is talking, then we all have to abide by that.
Like, in one respect, then show respect.
Right.
That's how I see
I
it.
agree.
so let's continue with this discussion of health insurance, and then we can move on with the rest of the presentation. So I'd like let's just go around the table, and I'd like to just say, right now, with our $445,000 increase in revenue, increase in revenue, we have a statutory increase of $589,000. So right off the bat, we're $146,000. We have a deficit of $146,000 just for this year, based on our increase in revenues and expenditures. And then if we add in any increase in board, any increase in board compensation, that's just going to increase the $146,000 to, I mean, if we added health insurance, it'd be $248,000 in deficit. And I just think it would be foolish of us, and it can be completely against our principles and our mission statement of putting the students and the families first, because that's a full-time equivalent right there. That's one full-time equivalent salary and benefits. So I personally I don't think we should. I think people that have students in the district, have had grandchildren in the district, or care about education, sign up for this job. I don't think the fact that there's no compensation limits people who sign up. and I take not offense, but I take some of the things you say, Maureen, about working class people not doing this job. I look at my hands. I work with my hands every day. I'm out in the dirt every day, and I know lots of people.
Not a class thing, though. Like whether you work with your hands or have calluses is not a class thing, right?
But
Why
Continue,
are we? Why do we
continue.
want to divide people into classes? I mean, why?
Some people don't own multi-million-dollar farms, and some of us do. And some of us have the luxury of being able to have flexible
people,
schedules and come to work, and some
earn
of us
the
do
minimum
not.
salary.
Some people have 2 jobs that they have to go to, and one parent looking after the children, and literally do not have 3 hours to spare in
Some
a
people
day.
have 2 full-time jobs.
Many people in carpentry have
I
2
really
full-time
don't think this is the
jobs.
direction we want to go with this right now.
We're discussing it.
Huh?
That's why it's here. That
Okay.
proposal.
Okay. So
So-
let me just go
Yeah,
around the table.
sure.
Are you in favor of the board receiving compensation?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How much?
That's up to discussion.
No, but I'm asking your opinion.
Yeah,
No,
I
what's
mean,
your opinion?
look, yeah, I mean, this is how I see it. All right. Health issues, health expenditures, personal expenditures on health insurance. This is actually, for example, how much is each one of us paying? Probably $400 a month if you are employed. If not, you're on your own. Or like, for example, like if you, let's say you're working, you have to actually, the law is that you have to have insurance.
Do you have an opinion though, as far as how much we should contribute for each board member?
Medical. Whatever the cost.
So you want to
It's
spend.
so $1,700 a month.
Whatever the cost. If it's
Okay,
$1,000,
so
$1,200.
Rogelio, so on the record, you
Yes, I'm
in
on the
favor
record,
of
yes.
$1,700
Correct.
a month?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the question is why not?
Jamie, are you in favor of it or?
I am not in favor of the health insurance. I would like to, as Maureen, I will agree, although I don't like her tact on why she claims that we need this. I do agree that we need to look at the board policy to either set in stone this would happen, the percentage, or do a stipend instead. The stipend for our type of size of district is $250 a month. Maybe we can negotiate that instead, way less than $100,000. And you can use that towards your health insurance, maybe something like that. I would not propose we allow this because that's an insane amount of money. That is a full-time equivalent. I would hate for a teacher not to have a job next year because we want health insurance. But I do agree that we should look at the policy,
Yeah.
not because people won't do it that are of caliber.
Maureen?
I think that I actually want to know first how many board members of this table, if it were paid for, would actually need it. You're already getting retirement from the district, correct, Sally? I mean, as a
That
retired.
doesn't cover my health insurance. I get Medicare.
Okay, so you
And I
wouldn't.
pay
so
a
you
supplemental.
wouldn't. So you wouldn't take it because the thing is, this figure right here is like, you know, sort of like we do with our, you know, FTEs and everything. Is it's kind of like an average figure. It's like a gigantic ballpark figure.
It's not gigantic, it's an
It's
It's a
accurate.
premium rate.
No,
It's
no.
an
But what I'm
accurate
saying
reflection
is,
of what
it's
the
not
insurance
because
costs
what
are.
we're being charged with looking at every year and creating in the budget is an actual number of saying we could say we want to cover 50% of insurance for the year. We could cover 25% of insurance. When I take when each of us take a job, part of what is negotiated is healthcare, you know, and you can either opt into the program or opt out of the program. So what, you know, right
This
now,
is a voluntary position.
when those board members voted for 0, I guarantee you none of them were reliant on that health care. They had either a means to pay for it, another source of health care, or whatever. They made that decision because it was a privilege that they had to be able to walk out of the position.
I don't think that's an accurate
I think
reflection.
I think the
That's an
policy.
assumption.
I think, well, no, it's not, because if
I
you
would hate
if
to
you
have people
need
do this job for the health insurance.
Yeah.
it was a huge benefit, and it allowed people to take the job seriously. And you're welcome. You should
So
call my
we're
dad
not
and
taking
talk
it
to him,
seriously?
My
or
grandma
talk
was on
to.
the board for 20 years.
Did
so
she get health care?
No, she did not. I
She
can guarantee
didn't-
it that she had through her employer.
She got it through
Even
her
then.
employer.
Yes.
And
Then
when I
that's
was
a
on the
privilege,
sit-
because
yes.
self-employed people don't get that privilege. They have to pay for it independently.
That's a choice you make.
As Andy pays for it independently.
Yeah.
So if the policy changed, you know, I mean, I think what I would like to have seen this number, I would see in a revision. I still think this number should be part of the consideration. But what we're being asked, because we're not looking at policy. Policy is a multi-year change. Okay, this is a 1-year change. So based on our income this year, I would like to see at least, you know, what it would look like if 50% of what people actually needed were going to, like, I would like to see 100% of who was actually going to take it, and 50% of what was actually going to
But
take
you
it.
have to budget it for the.
All
You
five.
can't. You can't discriminate that
Right.
way.
You have to offer it to
you have to
everyone.
offer it to everyone.
You have to budget it no matter
but
what.
also, you're not going to take it. I'm not going to take it.
Doesn't
so,
matter, you still have to budget it.
But you don't actually. You can actually create because it's only a 1-year thing. You can just create a 1-year thing based on. We're not changing policy. Budgeting is a 1-year thing.
No, it's a 3-year.
So
Three-year.
and also the other
It's
piece
3
is
years, Maureen.
when I was given all the information to apply for healthcare, it was more like $3,000 a month, and also because that was just for healthcare. So by saying benefits, are we saying health and welfare? What if we just said health insurance?
This is medical, dental, vision, and life.
This is medical.
So
This is what
not
I'm.
most
welfare.
insurances these days don't include necessarily dental and life insurance.
But ours does.
Our policy.
Okay.
That's why I said
So-
health,
It's a composite.
health insurance.
Yes.
So I would like this number not to be a ballpark figure. We don't need to have a ballpark
This
figure.
isn't a
Not
ballpark.
ballpark.
This is not
Right,
ballpark.
but you can ask at the table who would actually want to take it.
No,
No,
we
no, you
cannot.
cannot. We've tried to say that.
That's a
But
violation.
no, because we're not employees. We're the board.
It doesn't
No.
matter.
We're
You
voted
cannot-
in.
We cannot do that.
You can't do
You-
that, Maureen.
Is it a HIPAA violation?
Yeah, let's not argue about it. We know we can't do it, so let's move on.
Okay,
This is
then
not
I would
going
say
anywhere.
a percent. I would be interested in looking at a 25%, a 50%, and a 100%.
Well, this is
Because-
100%.
Because
just doesn't work
it does
that
that.
way.
You can pay. There are many health plans
So you
and
want to look at the
insurers.
policy and say, we will pay 25%
Actually,
of it or 50%?
there's two pieces of this. The policy will affect generations to come.
Mm-hmm.
This does not affect generations to come. This is this year. Right now, we're operating as a district in some sort of limbo land that I believe we're out of compliance. I believe our policy is pretty clear. So until we get our policy more clear, we're going to continue to operate in this limbo land where I believe our policy says that the district should be paying for it, and the district is telling us, oh no, they're not going to pay for any of it. And then some people are opting in, even though the district, you know, it's cuckoo crazy land.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying, though, so I'm going to be very clear and very direct. What I'm saying is exactly what it says here. The amount of the cost of premiums to be paid by the district shall be determined annually prior to the adoption of the next annual
Right,
budget.
so the
That's
percentage,
what we're
I'm
doing.
asking us to look at 25%, 50%,
We understand that.
and 100%.
We understand
That's
that.
And I got a
pretty
lot
easy-
of pushback
That's a
around
pretty
that.
easy calculation.
Right,
Yes.
that's what I was asking for based on the policy, 25%. So who would be paying the remaining 75%?
You would.
Right, the board members would, just in the same way that right now you're paying 100%. Okay? I just got a lot of pushback around the fact that it doesn't work that way and we can't pay a percentage amount. So can we pay a percentage amount that's not 0 or 100? Can we pay it 75% or 25% or 50%?
We could if we
Is
changed-
that
voted
possible?
to do that on policy.
Not on the policy,
If
in
you
our
vote,
budget.
if you voted in the budget, yes, you can. If you
Okay,
voted in the
so
budget.
I would like to see 25%, a 50%, and a 7.
Well, we can do that right here
We
by
can do
math.
that right here.
Yeah,
It's-
it's
it's- I mean,
51,000.
But
20
moving forward, because we're not
26,000.
making any, I thought this was a study session. I didn't think we were making any concrete decisions about
We're giving
cuts
we're
or.
giving direction tonight.
Then
yes.
I'm asked, that's my, you wanted us to go around the
No, no.
table and give direction, and that's what I'm trying to do. But I'm getting all sorts of mixed messages and
So,
pushback.
but just to be clear, you are recommending when we're already in a deficit
Yes,
of $146,000.
25, 50, and 100%. I'm interested in looking at those. Can we move forward?
No, I just want to be very clear because
I've already been clear. 25, 50, or 100%.
But
Can
you're
we move
recommending the
forward?
district add that expenditure.
You
in
would
this-
if you
At
wanted us to
25%.
go around the table and say what
No,
we were
I know.
recommending, and that's
Rogelio
what I'm
was very
recommending.
clear.
I'm very clear
Jamie
too.
was very
25,
clear.
50, or 100.
I know, but so you would like
that's-
the district to expend $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 on one of those on board member benefits
I'm-
in this budget.
Okay, is that what I just said?
I don't know.
Yes.
Yes. So somebody is hearing me. You're not, Andy. Can we move on?
Okay,
Thank you.
Sally.
Sally.
I would probably not take it. When I sat on the city college board, there were 7 of us, and I doubt that. And it was exactly the same kind of thing. You could take it, or you didn't take it. So, only because my insurance is very well set, and I, don't need to take this, despite the fact I know you have to still set it aside.
But more importantly, I think the question is that would you support increasing the budget expenditures when we're in a deficit spending?
No, I would not.
But that's the
But we
question.
can't make that discussion yet because we've made no concrete decisions about any of our expenditures or reductions.
No, but
So
no, that's
it's all
the first
hypothetical.
meeting.
And
No.
you know what? Every single line item for a budget or a warrant or any kind of thing reflects values. We've talked about this.
No, but
So
Maureen,
I
Maureen,
value.
wait.
Excuse me, I've got the talking
No,
stick.
wait, hold
so
on a second, though.
I value health insurance and compensation, and I believe that employees, you get what you pay for. So we're getting paid nothing. We're getting the best that we can get for nothing. But
you.
I feel that our pools at each election cycle, our pools would
About
be
respect.
wider.
What?
That's,
That's offensive to me. I'm sorry.
What about the respect for?
She's
I
not respecting
still,
me.
you should respect.
Or you.
Oh,
She's saying we're all a bunch
No.
of inept people.
Yeah,
that
we're not
I'm
qualified.
I'm not saying that, to be clear.
That's kind of is.
Well,
No,
yeah,
you sure
I'm saying
implied
that,
that.
I think that this
You
election.
had a better caliber of people if you paid us.
Okay, no.
So we are
So,
low caliber.
Let
is
me
what I
explain.
hear. I hear
Do you
that.
believe that an election should have more than the people running in it?
Have more people, the people who are running in
yeah.
it?
So there's
Doesn't
3
make sense.
slots open. Do you think you should have 4 people running, or 5 people
And
running, or
whoever
just
wants to.
3? So you think it's better if just 3 people get appointed?
So I'm not good because I was
No,
nobody ran against me.
no. You're taking it way too personally. If I wanted
That's
to
what
take
you're
it
saying.
personally,
Okay.
I would be direct
I
and
don't
say,
argue
I thought
semantics
you
with
were a
you.
low quality person.
Okay, so let's
Let's
move on.
keep on going.
So the point being, we actually have been given some budget assumptions so far. We have an increase in revenues of $445,000 this year. We have an increase in expenditures that we have no control over.
We actually didn't finish going through the
We're not
slides.
done. We haven't.
no.
You're moving
So-
ahead. I'm not there
Right,
yet.
So,
So-
all I thought we were doing was talking about
Correct,
this
it's
one
about this.
slide.
No,
But he's
I'm going-
talking about
I'm
what
going
we've
to
already
the slide that
mentioned.
we already covered. I'm just saying we have an increase in revenues, net revenues of $445,000. We have a net increase in expenditures that have increased $589,000 so far. So we have a deficit before we even get off the starting blocks of $146,000. So any compensation that goes towards the board increases that deficit that we're already in.
So
That's why I preface this roundtable that way because if we any expenditure we vote or any compensation towards the board is going to increase that deficit right off the bat.
Okay, so I know I came in late, and I apologize for that. I haven't heard so far since I've been here around Newsom's budget, which is
We
being
went over
described
that.
We
here.
went over that.
We went
Okay,
over that.
Does not affect us.
We're seeing
except
zero
for
money from
PERS.
Newsom's budget.
Except for PERS. That's the only.
but PERS is a huge.
Excuse me, STIRS.
Right, but that's a huge thing.
No.
Not for us. It wasn't.
Okay, so how does
It's a
it affect our
1%
budget?
reduction in the rate we pay.
Yeah.
So all the special education funding
No,
is
not
gonna,
for us.
No.
Why
Very
is that?
It's LCFF.
Yeah.
It is not part of special ed funding. It is a block grant, competitive to pay for additional services that we're not already offering within an IEP to a certain select population of special ed, low socioeconomic students. It is targeted, it will not help our general fund, nor is it a revenue stream we can budget.
Do you want to just keep going with the slides then?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I have some other questions, but I can move back to
Okay, so on slide 23, we have a list of 8 budget reductions. I'm going to flip quickly to 24 and 25, which cover the justification for these reductions. So last year, as you know, the process we went through, we cut $726,000. And listed in this slide are several of the things that were reduced last year to address last year's budget deficit to be able to sustain a 3-year budget. I'm going to slip to 25 really quick and talk about the reductions that we're proposing in this budget, and it kind of flips back between 23 and 25.
Before you could do that, I just want to remind everyone that this process we've been involved in this since the fall with a leadership team, and what they do is they review projected enrollments, staffing needs for next year, curriculum needs for next year, and materials. We look at course offerings. We look at enrollment in each course at the high school and the middle school, the average class sizes. We looked at the athletic budget and any services that we're currently involved in before the site makes recommendations. By the site, I mean the principal makes recommendations to the leadership team. So it's really, at this point, this is our first step in the leadership team making the recommendations for consideration in the reductions.
So the first reduction that we're recommending is a reduction of one-time expenditure and curriculum adoption of $215,000. In the current year, we adopted 2 elementary grade curriculum, both science and language arts, and we will not need 2 adoption cycles for next year. So we are looking to reduce that by $215,000.
So we don't need that at all.
No, we don't. That's a not needed.
Right. That was a one-time expenditure in this year. We don't need to have that. It's not going to repeat. The second reduction that we're anticipating is a reduction of a teacher at the high school, and this is a teacher through retirement attrition. The high school has declined enrollment over several years without a reduction in staff, and they can absorb this within their master schedule.
What's the department that they're in?
That's not, the department will be irrelevant because they redo their master schedule annually.
Well, I mean, it's important to know
That's
what.
an HR violation.
No, actually, let's just, I can answer your question for you. So the good news is that the average class size in the high school is about 23 students, which is wonderful for high school. Mm-hmm. So there are a number of teachers who have a number of different credentials. So in a small school, we have a number of teachers that teach in several departments. So we'll be able to provide the necessary staffing for the student enrollment without this position.
Here's why it's relevant to ask that question. English is a huge department in any high school. Math is a huge department in any high school. There are many other specialties that are not huge departments. For instance, agriculture. We've had a really hard time finding ag teachers, and if they were retiring, that would be a challenge.
We're not
so
cutting
what
any
I'm trying to say
We're not cutting
is,
any programs.
right.
No.
But
not cutting a
that's not
program.
clear from just knowing
We
which
just said it.
teacher is cutting. Okay.
No, we said
No, you're not cutting a teacher, it's a retirement.
it's a retirement.
Right.
So we're
And
not
I'm
replacing
asking
it
which,
because
which department
Yes.
that teacher is retiring from.
yes, and right now the retiree has not made the announcement. So what I want to say is I'm confident the principal has indicated to us that he has adequate staffing for all the course offerings and for the students.
So the third recommendation is the same situation on the classified staff. It is a classified staff through retirement attrition. We will not fill this position, and the services provided, which is non-classroom, will be a shared service between the 2 elementary schools. That's what we're proposing to shift.
So classified staff, without obviously indicating who this is like office staff or
It is
in
not
classroom?
Yeah, it's
or
not a classroom.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
non-classroom.
non-classroom.
Number 4, we are proposing to reduce a part-time custodian at the middle school. That gives them 2 full-time custodians to serve the middle school of 495 students. That is in line with the same staffing model at all of our schools. So this is a reduction of a 0.51 custodian.
So we have a part-time custodian that you want to potentially lay off.
Mm-hmm.
But that custodian has another job, works with us in another job in the district.
Got it.
Yeah.
So just he would not go there.
We just wouldn't have those hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Rogelio, you had a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Number 5, we have this is an isolated position. There's only one in the entire district. It is a tech support specialist 1.3175. It is kind of duplicating efforts of our library media staff. So we're proposing to reduce this. This person also works for the district in other capacity, and so this person would not discontinue working for the district. Number 6.
Well, when you say they wouldn't discontinue working for the district, in both of those cases, we're not mind readers. And if we're working somewhere 100% and it goes down to 49% or 0.675, we saw this happen last year with the instructional aides when they lost, those who lost hours definitely quit and had a problem. So we don't know. If reductions are made with hours, you can definitely lose those people.
Number 6, it is at the high school again. We do have currently an added section to one teacher of an independent study period. This is not needed moving forward. So this is again part of their master schedule reworking. So that would be a savings of that one section. Number 7, we are proposing a blanket reduction to athletics of $20,000. And Mr. Cornejo has proposed to do that a couple of different ways without cutting any athletic participation sports. So he's going to look at the 2 lowest participating teams, as well as taking travel reductions and possibly cutting one of the furthest distance meets. Or they're going to come within their program and reduce the program by $20,000. And understand that our athletic programs cost the district about $450,000-$60,000 for a district our size, and that's very
$450,000?
Mm-hmm. So it's a large program for a district our size. And then the last proposal are classroom aides, and we are proposing to reduce classroom aides with the exception of and leaving classroom aides in TK, K, and combo classes. So this is a proposed reduction of 4.969 FTE, and we will be keeping just about 12.2 FTE. So this is about a third reduction in the aides. So the total reductions are about 802,000, a reduction of about 3.68% over expenditures. So I'm going to go to slide 26. Where we kind of put that all together and we pull over the 18-19 expenditures. We add our $589,000 of budget drivers. We add the 802 in reductions for total expenditures of $21,626,000. Net change is a reduction of just about 1%. I will reiterate again. None of these numbers have any money built in for future compensation increases. On slide 27, bullet F, this is where we look at how it impacts our fund balance. This is unrestricted. We're looking to end 18-19 with $1.7 million, our revenue of 21.5, outgoing expenses of 21.6. We're still deficit spending about $100,000 in this proposal, with an unrestricted balance of 1.6 at about a 5.56% reserve level.
So our reserves still go down.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing I did was create 3 different scenario multi-year projections for you to look at. The first on page 28 shows you a multi-year with no reductions built in at all. So it shows you with the driver increases and the revenue increases as was presented, but without that 802,000 reduction. And you can see what happens to our reserve balance in 1920 and 2021. They're red. You have by law, we have to have a minimum 3% in the current and 2 subsequent. The reason it picks up in 21-22 is the compounding new revenues and budget drivers kind of helps support that back up over time, but it doesn't do it immediately. So if you increase $1 million but you spend 600, by the second year you have like another 800,000 that you've compounded in your fund balance. So it helps you 3 years out where you see that 3% recover, but you can't recover it at all in 1920 or 2021.
So our target reduction is about $800,000.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
it is.
And then this,
So-
and then what you've presented is the most is a comprehensive overview of the entire district with input from leadership and staff
Right.
to affect classrooms as least possible.
Yes.
Could I just want to clarify a little bit because we're just beginning. So
Yeah.
I would say it's a leadership that's talked to their staff, but now we'll go out to the staff. We've shared this with staff, but now we wanted to
Yeah.
discuss it with the board. Now we'll go back out, and I would in a couple of weeks it will be with staff as well.
Yeah.
This is really right now so early that it's predominantly leadership team.
Yeah.
Well, every
So-
year it's it's the hardest thing we do, I think.
Yeah.
Totally. Let me go through the last 2 scenarios. Scenario GB on page 29 is with the 802,000 reductions. So this is total general fund, so you'll see it look a little different than unrestricted. And you can see what happens to the reserves in the 1920, 5.58. It's a blip higher because they're restricted. And then it goes from 7.2 to 10.8. No compensation increases, but you can see that it does compoundly get better over time. And then the last scenario on page 30, would be what's the minimum reduction required to meet 3% in the current and 2 subsequent years. And it's a roughly 185,000, and it happens in the 2021 year where that kept dipping below 2.
And no COLA.
No COLA, no cost of living, no increases whatsoever. Right. Before you start discussion, I do want to just briefly tell you about this big 11 by 17 paper. This is something that has been done before. This is at first interim in the current year, and this is what I call a district cost summary. And it takes our unrestricted general fund and it categorizes it by the types of spending in our budget. The top orange bar are positions and staffing costs only. So it's all of our FTE. The yellow are site budgets. Those are strictly school site costs. That includes athletics and everything our schools buy, copy paper, classroom supplies, everything. The deep purple are program budgets. And the columns across the page tell you the titles of those programs. The light purple below are those costs of the deep purple that are contractually or committed, non-negotiable. Utilities, property and liability, contracts, textbooks, etc. So I'm not going to get into this, but this is just for your reference. This is a really good tool to take a look at what's in our budget.
So for the $181,000 in legal costs, I think, Roger, haven't you been asking? You've been asking for a number for probably 2 years.
No, actually, no,
I
that's
haven't
not
gotten
true.
it.
That's not true.
No, that's not
Okay.
true. We have
Well,
a memo
anyways,
right here
it's-
that was sent
it's nice to
in
see,
September.
It's nice
that
to see
outlined
that
it for
this
you.
is here. However, the part
get
that's
it every year,
surprising,
though.
the part that's surprising is that these are contractually obligated costs, meaning there's contracts that have been, in theory, approved
Or
in
they're
order to pay for
contractual
these.
or obligated, meaning you can cut it, but if we have to retain legal, the cost is going to exist.
But $181,554 is a very specific amount. It leads me to believe that's the amount that has been paid in the past, or how is
It's a
that?
budget.
a budget?
This is all budgeted. This includes special ed litigation, special ed consultation. It includes collective bargaining. It includes facility matters and other legal matters. It's all of the district operations.
But
that-
all of the other ones in here are like an audit, we pay the same, relatively the same amount. Utilities is based on our bills. So how did that legal cost number come, where did that come from?
based on what we've spent in past.
Spent in the past.
That's
Like
been
in the
given to the
past
board,
year?
by the way, the history
Yes.
of legal
Yes.
costs. I've given that
So-
a couple of times.
Has there ever been, because most of these are pretty, fixed costs that probably aren't gonna stay are gonna relatively stay the same.
They're not, what, say that again? I'm sorry?
Most of these are fixed costs that aren't gonna probably go down, like utilities, right?
Right.
Property and liability insurance, copier leases. Those are much more known quantities. Has any analysis ever been done to see whether that $181,000 budgeted is an appropriate amount?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We do that. I analyze this on a monthly basis.
Yeah. So in 2016-17, we spent 219,000. 2017-18, we spent 192,000, and here we're building 181.
So you take an average of
18-19 is
several years.
179, and so for 18-19, yeah, 181.
And that's
So
really a
this-
very low cost.
Yeah,
So
and I-
what
Yeah,
you're saying is,
compared to a $21 million budget,
So
it's
I'm-
much
Absolutely.
smaller
So I'm
than most
hearing two
districts.
sort of
Excuse me,
things.
we're not done yet. Compared to districts
Absolutely.
that have a $21 million budget, it's a very small cost.
Very small cost for legal.
Yes, because of special ed.
but I'm hearing different things. So Diana was saying that it's an average.
No, I
No.
didn't say an average.
Okay.
Trend.
How do you come to this number then?
It's an average,
It-
that's
it
what I
is-
heard, on
No,
the-
no,
based on
not-
past
no,
years.
no.
It's a trend. Like everything you do in the budget, you look at trend. Like our property tax projections and everything else, you trend it.
So what do you trend it based on?
What we've
Actuals.
paid in the past. This was a memo that went to you as a board back in November. That showed legal
So
fees for
we're
the last 3
projecting
years.
less for next year or more
Yes,
for next
less.
year? Less.
And we're projecting less in 18-19 than we paid in 17-18. I will tell you that the 18-19 budget, and I explained this a little bit as we have gone through the budget cycle last year and even into the interims. In order to achieve the deficit we have this year, even though it looks large, I took every line item budget I could that had surplus and analyzed it. I looked at the actuals, the paid bills, and I pared that budget down. So what districts sometimes do is they have 20,000 budgeted for supplies, you get 20,000 next year, but maybe you only spent 8. I budgeted like 8,500. Like I pared everything down so that our balances right now are very small to get us through the rest of the year. And I went over that with Diana. I go over that with the schools. There's not a lot of surplus left in this budget. There's a lot of situations, and legal bills are one of those things, where there's not a lot of choice when you have litigious activity or you have opinions that have to be made so that you don't end up in litigious activity. That's not something that's optional. We are not attorneys. So that's just for reference. It's a good tool.
I have a question about our nurse. What nurse is that referring to that we're paying benefits for?
We have a part-time nurse.
Isn't she paid through Nurse Corps, which is
We also pay Nurse
contracted?
Corps.
So, but we have
We have two
someone
nurses.
who we're paying benefits to?
Yes.
Yes, we employ a nurse, and we also have a
Which
nurse
site do we have a nurse?
District-wide.
district-wide.
District nurse.
And in my experience, mostly it was students with diabetes.
Yes.
But that's different than the Nurse Corps student, or Nurse Corps?
No, it was a nurse, and she saw students with diabetes.
Right, but that's different than the Nurse Corps person.
Yep.
So, is that under contractors or something?
Yes.
What's Nurse Corps?
Private corporation that provides us with nurses in schools.
A lot of what Nurse Corps does is serve our medically fragile special ed kids.
We pay for that also, or it's
Yes, it's required.
by law.
I've never realized that we had a district-wide nurse.
We have for a couple of years now.
I
So,
think
yeah.
we added
Well,
that,
we've
we
had
added that last year or the year before.
year before.
Yeah. So I think it's fairly clear what, kind of what our parameters are here. Maybe we just go down the suggested budget reduction page and give an opinion on or we have a discussion on each one of those items.
Can I ask a question, an overall question first? Does this budget with the recommended reductions end the cycle of deficit spending?
No.
No.
Well, I just showed you on page,
Yeah.
if you look at slide 27,
So on that same note, then
At this time.
at this time, it's
Given
per-
the information we
right.
know.
yeah.
The deficit is still just under 100,000.
Yeah. See page 27? Maureen, do you
I
see?
saw it.
You saw the deficit? Yeah.
I just
So-
wanted to clarify that.
So just based on something you said earlier, Maureen, and on that comment, would you suggest that we look at deeper reductions?
I just, in the past, I've had too many questions to feel like I could make a confident decision about the budget and the cuts, like the whole thing.
But we have a 2-year look back now.
I've also, as in the past, what I feel I don't have enough information about is the rationales behind these reductions. I think that, which is not to say there's not information here, there is information here, but I think, I've said this now, this is my third time getting to say this, but I really think that a budget should reflect a district's values, and I hope that our highest value is student achievement. So, I think there's ways of doing cost-benefit analyses on in budget making and in education, and in saying, where are the fact-based decision makings? Like, where are we? We're in a deficit spending pattern that's not healthy, and we're making cuts without necessarily considering, are these changes going to increase student achievement? And I know in the past it's been like, well, no cuts are gonna affect student achievement, but that's not necessarily the case. There is research and fact-based ways of analyzing a budget in terms of where are you getting the most bang for your buck. And in my understanding, I don't know if this is, some people would say, staff or faculty that work with students, that's good bang for your buck, but I don't know that for sure because I don't have the data. So
Are you
I
in
think-
are you in agreement that we because that was like a big circle?
it wasn't a big circle if you've been listening, but that's okay.
But are you in agreement that we need to make approximately $800,000 in cuts to our budget? Because we need to have
Ultimately-
common ground here in order to have a good discussion.
Ultimately, any cuts that are made, ideally, there would be some relationship to student achievement.
No, that wasn't the question. The question is based on the information
Well,
you
I'm
can
not
give
going to
it.
be.
No,
Andy, you always like to paint people into a corner
I'm
and make
not-
them say things that they don't feel comfortable saying. Please just allow me to say what I'm going to say and stop. Are you trying to say something? Instead of
no.
asking me a question, why don't you just make a statement?
I'm going to go around the table here, Maureen. So,
Good. Start with yourself.
So we need to all be on the same page as far as the information that we've heard tonight and the condition our budget is in, and where we have and where we have to get to in order to have a certified budget.
That's actually
we kind of, in my opinion, we need to be in agreement that there needs to be a certain reduction in expenditures. And my question is, again, would you be in agreement that we need to make at least $802,000 in reductions? Because to have a good discussion here tonight, we need to be in agreement on that.
That's like saying that would be like me, like my husband coming home from work and saying, I got a pay cut, and him saying, before we talk about my pay cut, we have to be in absolute agreement what my pay cut is. I mean, that's absurd, you know? Like, we can talk about, like, I'm interested in hearing what Jamie and Roger and Sally have to say about anything that's on the table. And I hope that any of us, because this is a study session, not an agreement session, it's a study session, that we have this opportunity right now is set aside for us to study the budget and understand it, each in our own way and in our own terms.
Yeah, actually, for us to move forward, we need to know that. We need to know that if there's agreement on the board, do we make the $802,000 cut, or do you want to not deficit spend and we make the $899,000 cut? Do we cut even deeper? We need to know that before that's the next step. So that's what I want to know, is that do you all agree that we're going on the right path by proposing this extent of reductions? Or are you interested in reducing less and not getting to our 10%? So that's what we need to know. Actually, we need to know that. Do you agree with making a cut of 802,000, or do you want 802 plus the 99, or do you want half of that? I mean, that would be helpful to us.
And that's not saying these cuts specifically, it's just in general, we need to make.
Well, that's the first step, is to agree what level of cuts are you going to make.
Yeah,
then the second step is this is what the best thinking of the leadership team. So then I would challenge all of you, in a budget that has 84% personnel, what would you all recommend that we cut? But we need to know what the target number is.
Right.
It doesn't do any good sitting around talking about areas of reductions if you don't have a target number. So that we're interested in that.
In my experiences, you want to cut farthest away from the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think looking at this, with your input, the goals, the aims, the purposes, and the leadership team discussions that you've had, I see that with the retirements, custodians, you are very far from the classroom, and I agree. I'm almost, I'd rather see, because we got loud and clear last week that the smaller the district, the higher the reserve, and it's kind of scary to see it at barely 3%. It certainly would be much better to have it at 10%.
Also keep in mind that there's no COLA in here at all. So
that's the other point, is that, we will be negotiating a COLA, so we want to make sure that can happen. So
And
that's another context.
How many years in a row has the amount come in higher of what are they called? How many times has the revenue come in higher than projected?
Not in the last 3, other than last year's one-time impounds.
Well, it does seem to me that there's often some sort of miraculous
No.
hallelujahs.
No. That happened
Okay.
10 years
not
ago.
correct.
No, that's
Marina,
not correct.
That is incorrect characterization.
You
We
really
did-
have to watch yourself when you throw
so
these
for
statements
instance,
out
okay,
there.
We
Let me
did
just
close
say,
last
for
year's. We
instance-
did close last year's financials with a deficit of over $550,000. That was actuals. That was not made up. That was not projected. That was actual spending over revenue by over $500,000. That was a reality.
So can we keep going?
Yeah, let's
to
keep
find
going.
out about the
So I'm in agreement that we need to make this reduction in expenditures, and I would almost say we should look at additional reductions, considering I know that our budget, that our reserve levels have not been very healthy the last couple of years, and it makes me very nervous when we look at the potential, unknown expenditures that come up. So, I don't know that we need to look at zero deficit, but I'd like to look at more than, at least like to look at what recommendations are looking like for additional reductions in expenditures.
What would be a target? Like $1 million?
I don't think $1 million.
Okay.
Well, that's one.
I mean,
one person's
we-
opinion.
we-
so then,
Excuse me. I'm trying to listen to Andy. Excuse me.
So,
I've asked
so
specifically.
I would say somewhere between $800,000 and $900,000.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sally?
I agree with Andy.
you'd like a little bit more?
I'd like
I
to.
think
I'd like to
just to
see
see
what
the
that would.
I
reserves.
mean, you'd like to see what
Yeah.
that looks like.
Yeah.
Because I think we need to build those reserves in
Okay.
case of that rainy day.
Maureen?
I think that the classroom aides should be absolutely taken off the table. They work directly with students, and the idea that they should only be in TKK and combo classes, this rationale I find very odd, because it says we want to keep, like, we're emphasizing how important they are for those grade levels, but we're going to eliminate them for everyone else, when those upper grade levels actually have they have more students in them. So, and also based on what the classroom aides, the high turnover that we had last year, we made them go through the pink slipping process, the whole 9 yards. If we eliminate these 5, we know that we're probably going to have to pink slip all 70 of them again, and I just don't think it's worth the kind of minimal cost savings at looking at it. And I know it says it will, if revenues increase in the final budget, this will not be reduced. The problem is, we have to kind of start to make these cuts before March, which is when they're all going to be pink slipped. And honestly, I think they're
No, they're not
these are not
certificated.
these are not
Certificated.
teachers.
They're not pink
well, they
slipped.
have to get they have to be given notice.
No, not certified.
Well,
not classified.
it went through. The process was not good last year.
But that's not what we're talking
We're not
about.
talking about last
But
year.
I am talking about that because
I asked for a number. A number.
Well, I'm not comfortable giving you a number.
But we
right
need
now.
the
And I
direction.
don't- Well, then you've gotten some direction.
No, but
and
we
take the
need it from
direction
you, and we need it from everybody. So
Then
what's your direction?
My direction is I need better information about the rationale, how these cuts are related to student achievement, and how they reflect our goal of increasing student achievement. Okay?
No,
So-
cuts
So
don't
until-
increase student achievement.
Until I get
Maureen.
that information, I'm not comfortable throwing out a random, oh, let's cut 6 million. I mean, it's like, I want to make fact-based rationale, cost-benefit analyses. I want analysis.
Yes,
of
that's what the leadership
why.
team has done.
That is my job.
So it would
We've
have been
done that,
wonderful
and
to
this is
see
our
that,
recommendation. Yes, it's right
so
here.
that-
So
right there.
Maureen,
So that-
you've done a really
so-
good job of not saying anything right now.
which is my prerogative.
Okay, but we need to give staff direction.
So my prerogative is I don't have the information I need to make the decision that you're asking for.
Okay, so if you'd be kind enough to send us the questions, then we'll be happy to
I just
provide.
did. I said, show me the facts and the rationale about how these cuts specifically will improve student achievement.
That's
because
not what we said.
Okay.
I've not
so-
said that.
So that's my.
They do
that's-
not improve student achievement.
Okay, well then at least it's on the table there. So these cuts do not improve student achievement.
No.
Okay.
That's not what they're here for.
So
They're here for what they do is they read.
impossible for
Excuse
me
me.
to shape
I'm
a
not done
budget
yet. I'm not done
around
yet.
student achievement,
Maureen,
which is
Maureen, you're
which is
interrupting me.
The whole job of the whole job of the board is to improve student achievement. All of our financial decisions must be made in support of student achievement.
But
If
Maureen-
we are making cuts that don't affect student achievement, then it's impossible for me to know whether they're good cuts or bad cuts.
Okay, so just take the cuts off. Take these cuts off. We need a number. She needs direction from us as board members on how much you would like to see a reduction in expenditures. That's really what the question is.
And it's my prerogative to say that I don't have the information I need
But
to answer the
you
question.
do. Just
You do.
Moving
We're
on.
deficit
You-
spending.
Moving
We're-
on.
we're
Yeah, we're
deficit
deficit
None of
spending.
you, as much as all of you would like to live inside my brain, you don't.
Okay.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Let's, Jamie.
Okay, so Jamie.
Based on this very detailed report that we were given, clearly we need to make some cuts. I would prefer to make more cuts because I'd like to have a bigger buffer.
So just so you know, I suggested somewhere between $800,000 and $900,000
Okay.
in reduction. Sally agreed with
Sorry,
me.
I stepped up.
And so that's kind of as we're going around the table here.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're kind of in agreement with
Yeah,
that.
I would say like 900 plus
Yeah.
is where I like to see. Just to be able to pay back some of that buffer room.
And also, we don't have the COLA in there, so that's
Exactly.
another
That's gonna
consideration.
take it out also.
So I see that. Rogelio.
First of all, I think that we shouldn't have just one option, like this is it.
Right. It's ridiculous.
This is plan A, and take it or leave it. No.
Okay, so take the
I
take
will-
the
I
take
believe
the,
on plan
take the
A,
specifics
plan,
out of it.
Plan
though.
A, B, or plan C.
But take the specifics. take the specific
No.
cuts out.
No, no,
and just- and-
I read here.
and
For
just-
example, last page, it says reserve balance 3.42%, total reductions 185.
Do you know what that slide is representing? The minimum
Minimum
needed.
reductions, yeah, that's
Yeah, so I
that's the
gave
minimum.
you. Yeah, so I gave you. Is that what you're recommending?
That's
So you're
as of today.
Okay.
As of today, it's not final. It's
Okay.
not final. It's just
That's
an initial discussion.
Yeah, that's why we're
Here's
asking.
another-
We're asking.
Here's an example
We're-
of effective decision making, for instance. I was at a county supervisors meeting recently, and at no point were they given just one option, because they understand, their staff understands that each of their decisions affects thousands of people. And that there's only 5 people, like our board, there's 5 people making a decision that's going to affect thousands of people. So for each decision, there was at least 3 options, and then a rationale that clearly kind of stated what the consequences for each option would be, with the fiscal implications and the other implications.
But our budget
So
has no.
all we're
you
getting,
can- you
all
can't
we're getting
compare a
is
county
8. We're
budget to
getting,
a
we're getting
small
8.
budget.
We're getting 8 bullet points that we're told either do these 8 things,
No.
or you're
No,
putting,
no,
you're
that's what they're
endangering the
saying.
fiscal
No,
health of the whole thing.
That's why a
We're not- for
recommendation
each-
shouldn't be final.
And for each of
Should be
those,
2 or 3.
for each of those 8 options, there could be a gradation of those options, right? For each of those 8 options, we could say, here's the most conservative, here's the most liberal. You know, like maybe you've targeted areas that you wanted to cut, and then there's 3 options within those targeted areas, but hopefully those targeted areas would have some, you know, would have some direction from all of us, like here, like if we want to actually go through, rather than arbitrarily trying to pull some number out of a hat that we're all going to 5 of us agree on, why not go through the bullet points and say, do each of these fall into the realm of things that we might consider cutting? Do these cuts, knowing our communities as each of us do as a board?
But
do these-
first we have to
do
agree
these-
what is up and what is down, and
it's not arbitrary.
and it's not
And from the
arbitrary at all.
leadership
So we.
Well, here's the difference,
No,
though.
no, take
when we
the-
get
ta-
this report again, the numbers are going to be different. This is how it works.
But
All
take-
spring,
take the
it's going to change
take
based
the
on the
spec-
information that we get.
Take the specific cuts. Just ignore that and say the bottom line is $802,846. In order for us to maintain adequate reserves for this year and 2 years looking forward, okay? That's all we're asking right now. That's all staff is asking for, and so I just want to summarize here, because I heard Rogelio say he's in agreement with about $185,000 in reductions.
That's one option. That's why I said we need more than one.
Why not? This is the
That-
first. This
yeah,
is the
right.
first. At this point in time, that's all. That's all we're trying to get to here. So at this point in time, with the information we've been given tonight, is that what you're saying?
As of today.
Okay.
Why don't
mean,
you ask
it-
instead, what is it that we can agree on? What's a starting point that we can agree on?
That's what
I've
we're
been
asking.
trying to
can
do
ask
that
all
all
All right, then
night.
let's move forward. If we're all in agreement, supposedly, then why are we belaboring this point? Like,
Yeah,
let's move on to something else.
Yeah, actually, we're fine. We have a majority
Okay.
interest. The majority of the board is interested in cutting 800 to 900,000. So we have our direction. So we're all set. We know what to
Okay.
do. We went.
I
we know
mean,
what to
I
do.
think the other valuable
yeah.
piece that we could do is start to look at those bulleted areas.
I just wanted to
And-
include
and start to
Rogelio
say-
and Maureen's opinions, so that you know I was being inclusive here.
What you're saying, Diane, is that, well, okay, Rogelio Marine, what you're saying, let's put it aside. We got 1, 2, 3, that's it.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
No, that's what.
No,
Diana
but-
just
We
said.
have
no,
a few
no,
more budgets.
no,
study
but-
sessions.
Yes,
but-
but
Yeah,
but
this is
she
just
just did it.
initial-
We got a
But
recommendation.
how it has worked in the past is that based on this kind of conversation, next time we're going to come and there's going to be more specific cuts, and 3 people will have said, oh, like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that what Roger and I, if you want to actually hear us and take some direction, is that we need more than one option per item.
So if you recall last year, I think I ended up with like 6 options that we had the same round robin conversation about as not enough options. I'm going to refer you back to slide 11. 84% of our cost is people. That's the only place we're going to find savings.
And that.
So for each of these, there could be a myriad of
I'm going to
options
ask you to go
for
to
each
page
of those.
11, please.
I know that slide, but for each of these
No,
bulleted
No,
items,
no,
Page
but
11.
I
they-
understand the point that you're trying to make.
but there's not going to be options because the leadership team has decided that that's not.
Well,
They,
then why are we here?
Here I am at these other board meetings, like the county supervisors that I was at recently. They understand that for a big decision, in order to get 5 people, like ultimately, it would be ideal if we could agree, right? Especially on the budget.
So I just
So in order to, like, if 2 of you are saying you would like to see more options, and many other boards allow their boards to consider many other staffs. In fact, every other staff I've ever watched a board meeting for, when it comes to budget negotiations, it's sticky.
So we
And
did
so they
bring,
create
again,
other options
yeah.
within the realm.
Yeah.
They say, well, what if we
What
if
if-
we could eliminate either 200, 100, or 50,000 from this? We could eliminate either 130, 70,000, and then the board gets to choose based on our knowledge of our community
So
where the
Maureen,
targeted
so-
items.
but
so
in people,
bas-
you can't limit. That's the difference. 80. What we're trying to explain is that the other boards are not eliminating people. That's
This is 4.96. That's not people.
That's-
That is
Yes,
people.
it is.
You can't have
That's people.
4.9% of a person.
Yes, it's
Yes,
FTE.
it's different part-time
Right.
people.
Right.
Yes, it
so
is.
We could say we don't want to eliminate 4.9%. We want to
No,
eliminate
it's not
2%.
percent, it's full.
It's not a percent.
Full-time equivalent.
Almost 5
I think
people.
we all understand the idea of having options.
No. You're not making any
So you're
sense to
saying
us.
these are the only budget options that we can
No.
make for this year?
No. Let me go back. Before you laugh and make fun, you don't make any.
What I just heard.
You're saying that you can't have options?
No.
What I just heard is that, well,
So-
the district leadership has made this decision.
No.
No, that's not what you're hearing.
That's what I heard.
No,
Wait,
let's stop for just a minute.
No, I don't
please.
stop.
Please.
Wait, I'm talking. All right? This is what I just heard. District leadership has made this decision already.
No.
We have 3 board members approving it.
No.
That's it.
No, that's not.
Nobody
that-
approved it.
No. That's what I heard.
But that's not what I said, Rogelio. No.
You said
No, I
it.
did not.
No, yes, you did.
Raheli, I'm not going to argue with you.
No.
I
Okay,
said the
that's-
leadership team made recommendations
Well,
to
it's
the
just-
board. That's not a decision.
Can't
Who
the
is the
board,
leadership
can't-
team?
can't
Maybe
we-
that's what he's not
can
understanding.
the board then, this is how it works in what I watched recently, is the Board of Supervisors then spoke to the staff with their questions, needing more information and asking questions. Sometimes, they needed more time. And I think what
You can come
Roger
back
and
for
I are
next
both
time.
saying is that these options are far too concrete. That if you just put this in front of us today, we would not make the vote that you wanted us to make, probably, because there needs to be more options. And everyone's arguing to the teeth that we don't need more options, and it's just absurd.
I have a suggestion. Would you like us to explore savings through raised class size ratios? That's an option. Would you like us to explore limiting the number of aides per classroom by a standard? Would you like us to explore staffing ratios that say you get 1 counselor per 500 kids and that's what you get through, and then would you like us to explore those things to bring more reductions in staff to you?
No, I don't think that's a good interpretation of what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is if the leadership team has worked together to say that they think that there's $20,000 in athletics that can be eliminated, obviously this is a number that they've come up with somehow, right? And so there might be a lower or higher number that they could imagine having, and having those other options for each bullet point gives the board some
So
flexibility.
a teacher
in terms
reduction
of-
doesn't have funding options.
Yes, they don't understand.
A teacher reduction doesn't have funding options. I can't say, okay, a teacher costs $110,000, but we'll only cut 20% of that.
But for some of these, like this classroom aides, this is
266.
this is a number of people. I don't know how many people. This could be 6 people. This could be
shows,
4
right?
people. No, it's 4.96
Would you like-
FTE. That's
so,
not how many people it is.
Maureen,
That's
would
how
you
many
like
hours.
fewer reductions? Would you like that 800 number to be 400,000 or 500,000?
We need to
So,
know a
okay.
target
Sally,
number.
Sally and I are unclear. Okay, 4.96. How many staff people is that?
It could be any number of staff.
That's what I said.
That's
Yeah, so, but getting back to the point here, what I've been trying to get to is we're getting hung up on the specifics in these reductions. And that's why I tried to preface this whole discussion on where we each thought we should be as far as a gross
We've already
reduction.
moved past that.
No,
We've
no,
moved-
no,
We've moved past the $800,000 number.
No, I don't think we have, because you're stuck on that
Yeah,
page.
because I'm talking about having options around any sort of
I
reductions.
know, but we have to agree on what the reduction in expenditures is.
Not right now. We don't. We're not voting on it. We don't need a. We
Well,
don't
no,
need to agree
okay,
on it.
well,
And even
okay,
if we were
that's-
voting on it, we don't need to
That's
agree on it.
That's
to do.
fine.
that is why we got
on
for
alternatives.
meetings.
They
This
don't
is
know
the-
how many alternatives to find different options for you unless you give them how much we
Give-
need to find options of.
Well, I mean, I think ideally, if I had it, ideally a district isn't in a deficit every year. And so ideally,
you're suggesting is
no cuts were going to have to be made. And I've already said, so I'm not going to repeat myself what I've said about why I can't make a good opinion right now. about,
but Maureen,
so
you don't wanna make any cuts.
I've moved on. I'm
no, but
actually
you,
looking
no,
at
no,
trying
you,
to
but
have
you're, so
options
I'm
within
confused
the
here.
within the cuts that we're
I'm
trying
really
to make.
confused because you're critical of the fact that we've had deficit spending, yet you don't want to cut anything.
I've never said that I don't want to.
You have, because you
anything.
voted
didn't
against
vote for it
every
last
That
year.
single.
doesn't mean that if
You voted
I'm
against
happy-
it.
The voting against something
cuts.
doesn't mean that you don't want to make any cuts,
You voted against every budget.
right? But that doesn't mean that I didn't want to make cuts. To be clear, I voted against a budget which has last year had increases and reductions.
This year, you voted
So-
against the budget.
Which year?
This
Should
is
we go
18-19.
around the room and each talk about our voting habits on all variety of items
No,
for
no,
the
no.
last year?
I'm just saying.
Like Andy, what did you vote on the budget
I
for
voted
the last
I
12
voted-
years?
I voted for the budget.
No, for the last 12 years, you voted for the budget.
We've had discussions, but my
Okay,
no,
so
no,
for the last 12
no,
years,
Maureen,
everything
no,
you've
we're not
done
gonna-
has contributed to
we're-
where we are now, correct? So in a way, my voting against the budgets could also be seen as a way of voting against the idea of just rubber stamping whatever comes before us.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get to here, Maureen, is that on one hand, you're very critical of the deficits that the district has been incurring, and on the other hand, you don't want to cut things from our expenditures. And so I'm
okay,
very
you're
confused.
putting words in my mouth because I'm not saying that. I'm not
Okay,
saying that I don't
that's
want to
fine.
cut
I-
anything.
So you
I
do
have
want to
never
cut.
actually
Okay,
said
so that's what we're trying to figure out. How much do you think we should cut in our expenditures this year?
How much money?
Cannot make a good decision based on that because none of these cuts have the kind of justification that I would need to make to my
if we
community
didn't have
in order to justify
but if we
that.
didn't have that's
Yeah.
so we're talking in
Andy,
circles here.
you have the
But-
ability to see these numbers in the abstract. I can't.
Okay, I know. But
So there.
But,
So we're just gonna
but-
have to
but-
leave it at
but-
that
But
and move on.
that's part of the budgetary process. Is
For you.
no,
No, for us.
just for
No.
Legally.
For you.
No, not for me.
Well-
for that's how budgets are put together.
So
You-
is this
you-
called a budget study session where we school Maureen on what we think the budget process should be?
Okay.
No,
I
it's not.
think.
So let's just
is there
move
anything
on.
else we need to talk about tonight?
Well, I just want to summarize.
Okay.
So it seems that most of you want us to look at reducing the budget by $800,000 to $900,000. Is that right? Is that
Correct.
right?
And maybe give us some additional ideas besides what's just on that paper.
For sure, yeah, we
And
can.
perhaps some options within those items to give us some ranges of choices. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, here's what I'm confused about. I need to know the total. Is the total amount? We can give
You've
ranges.
got the total.
800.
It's been given to you by the various board members that felt like they could make that decision.
Okay, so $800,000 to $900,000.
That's based on the direction of the people that felt like they could give you that
Okay.
information.
All right.
So that's
But
why
wi-
I was
but
right.
Within $20,000 from athletics, $20,000, we're not being told what that's cutting, except
Yes, we did
a
tell
broad
you.
range of sports.
No, we didn't say
No,
that.
it was very
Read
specific.
what it says on the page, please.
I did read what he said
Travel
on the
plans,
page.
It's very
but-
specific.
Okay,
Yes.
It's
but
very specific.
Then within that, you've gotten to that number somehow. $20,000 wasn't just pulled from air. So within that $20,000, perhaps there's some wiggle room. Perhaps there's more money that could be.
No, there
cut.
is not.
Perhaps there's less money. So that's where with all due respect, you're wrong.
So it is our job-
Because listen, our job is to decide which cuts are made, not to be told these are the 8 things you have to cut.
Do you have
Correct?
Do you have some
Yes.
suggestions?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
What would
I
be your
would like-
recommendations?
I would like options within each budget item so I understand what's being cut.
So you
Is
want
it-
them to tell you what
so-
to cut.
So
no,
let's
I
take.
don't. I want to be given options.
So on
within
option
each-
number 2, what options would we have in multiple choice?
Do you want us to list different teachers and different?
For
Okay.
option number
Let's
2,
I know
do-
we can,
let's
but I'm
do-
just saying that that's the only other option
the
we can
one-time
do.
expenditure is a one-time expenditure. There's no wiggle room within that, as far as I understand it. That's
what do you mean by wiggle room?
Okay, so classroom aides. We don't know how many staff people that actually is. It's hours. It's a
I do
reduction
know.
of hours. Okay,
That's-
but I don't.
FTE. FTE are full-time equivalents.
But 4.96, that could be
Those
6.
are hours. We employ
I
by
know.
hours.
That could be 6 employees, or it could be 10.
That's not relevant to the
Okay,
FTE.
well, you could cut more hours. You could cut less.
Would you
hours.
want us to cut more hours?
I'm saying, I would like to look at what the financials would be if you cut less, and if there's the possibility of cutting more. I don't know why you wouldn't look at the possibility of cutting more, or.
Okay.
If it's 266,000, what if you took 133,000? What if you took?
It's not by
52?
dollar, it's by FTE. The FTE drives the dollar.
Okay, well then, 4.96 FTEs, 3.2.
So are you saying to
96
reduce the
FTE?
reductions of 802
I
down
can't
to
tell
a
you
small
how. I
number?
can't. All I can say
Okay.
is that, based on my experience of covering many meetings in budget negotiations, people are given options because the expectation is not that they're going to look at the same 8 bullet points and agree upon first reading. The expectation is that they're going to look at the 8 bullet
We're
points
not being
and
asking
disagree.
for agreement. But,
Looking for a dollar target.
But so we have a range here, multi-year projections. We have the range with no reductions, giving out basically we're in the red and we're all out of a position, and Diana is out of a position, and Maureen's out of a position. We have a reduction of the recommendation of $802,000, and that shows us where we are, and then we have the minimum of $185,000 in reductions, and what that does to our multi-year projections. That's I think all that staff is asking for tonight is some. But we've gotten there, so
We're all set.
I don't want to keep beating a dead horse.
We're all set.
So basically what I'm hearing is that, okay, we got the 1, 2, 3 vote and that's it.
No,
We haven't voted on the
We haven't
budget.
voted.
No, but.
At the next
but
budget
it's an
session, they're gonna
assumption.
come back to
But
us with
it's-
some additional
No,
ideas.
It's an
well, I think,
assumption.
no,
That's
excuse me.
what I heard.
Yeah, but I think you're confused.
No, I'm not.
No,
I've
we
heard
need a
well.
direction. We need direction. So what I was
the
saying is,
Tonight.
Why is it that when I give direction, I get argued with? It's really
Because-
frustrating.
because
and then
it-
when Andy gives direction of 900,000, oh, it's
You
quickly
didn't
writing
just
it down.
that
It's so
came from
interesting
3 different
to me.
board
No,
members.
no,
No, he's the one who said 9,000 to 1 million, and you wrote that down
I
really
didn't say
quickly.
that.
No, no.
said-
Yes, you did.
I wrote
And
down
it's so
everything you
interesting
said,
because
Maureen.
I said, let's have options, and instead of just saying, okay, sure, let's look at that,
Maureen?
it's an argument.
I
It's
wrote everything
really
down. I
frustrating.
wrote everything you said down.
yeah, we
Great.
wrote everything
and I'd
down.
love to see the results of that.
It's
If-
really
if you
unclear,
feel
though.
Like I'm happy. You're welcome to call me anytime, and I'll clarify.
But
yeah.
that's really what
The
the
board
point of
gives
this meeting.
direction, not individuals.
Yeah,
That's
I
the point.
don't-
That's the point of
Okay,
this
but
meeting.
when one board member gives direction,
No.
it's written down very carefully, and when
I don't
another
think
board
I gave
member,
direction.
No, no.
Okay.
I want to say that Sally gave direction, you gave direction, Jamie gave direction, Rogelio
Sally
gave direction.
gave direction. Did a 10-minute argument then ensue about why that direction was impossible?
But your direction is very unclear.
Well, I'm happy to clarify. Is it
Please
still
do.
unclear?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to buy a dress. I could buy the $300 dress, the $200 dress, or the $100 dress. I'm going to show you guys pictures. Here's what the $300 dress looks like. Here's what the $200 dress looks like. Here's what the $100 dress. What do you guys think we should buy?
However-
Let's have a discussion.
What's your budget?
If we got the $200
Yeah.
dress,
But
it would
what's
have
your-
the.
How much money do you have to spend?
much money do you have to spend?
If we bought the $200 dress, we'd have to make these changes in our world in order to make.
How
that
much
happen.
is your budget
If
to
we
buy a
make-
dress?
Well, what are our priorities? What is it that we want to achieve as a group? Do
Yeah.
we want to have a
But you have to
wedding with a strapless gown?
You have a starting
These-
point of a budget and how much money you have.
Yeah, we need to
in
know the
bank.
budget
Now,
number.
do you go shopping with an unlimited amount of funds?
Sometimes.
Well, we don't.
Depending on what it is.
Awesome.
Yeah, we don't. here
Depending
in the
on what
district.
it is. So you guys are getting hung up on needing to have some sort of figure.
Yes.
You've gotten that.
Yes.
So I don't even know why that's even part of that discussion. What I'm saying is I need more inclusivity in the decision-making process. I need to have options. And I said that last year, and actually Roger is saying that too. So there's two of us saying that we don't enjoy the process of being dictated to because we're a board.
We're not
and
dictating-
ultimately,
we're not dictating
We
anything.
should be making the,
But we're
the
not dic-
decisions
we're not dictating
rather
that-
than the staff coming and saying, these are the cuts you have to make.
So-
That's not what we
Maurice,
said.
Suggestions.
These
Right,
are the
but why aren't
recommendations.
we- Why aren't we, why
It's
aren't
not
we
that-
having
That's what
why aren't we having,
that's what I said.
why
I
aren't
mean,
we
this is
having a
just
healthy
the-
discussion?
But it's
We're just
not
need to move past
like,
this.
Why aren't we
All
having a
right,
healthy
take it.
discussion of the options rather than just being argued at
so are
about
we-
the
are we-
fact that we
We're
need
done.
So
them?
there can
Okay.
bring back additional
All right.
options
Well,
next time.
I appreciate everyone coming in tonight and spending this. I think we had a good meeting, and we'll adjourn and see everyone in 2 weeks for our regular scheduled meeting.
We don't have one next week?